Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who told you a story that felt just a little too perfect? Their words flowed smoothly, their eyes locked onto yours, and yet, somewhere deep inside, you felt something was off. Maybe it was the way they smiled when they shouldn't have. Maybe it was the way details shifted when you brought it up again later. Or maybe it was simply that eerie sense you couldn't shake, that what they were saying was not the truth. That moment, that silent recognition, is where the psychology of a pathological liar begins to reveal itself. Most of us lie sometimes. We say we're fine when we're not. We tell a friend their haircut looks good when secretly we're unsure. Small, harmless lies oil the gears of human connection. But pathological lying is something entirely different. It's not about smoothing over tension or avoiding discomfort. It's not even about manipulation for personal gain. It is a compulsion, a deep, almost unstoppable urge to distort reality. A pathological liar doesn't just lie to you, they lie to themselves, and over time they become entangled in a web so dense that even they can't find the exit. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon for decades. Some believe it emerges from early childhood experiences, where truth and safety were never aligned. Imagine growing up in a world where telling the truth was punished, where honesty led to rejection or pain. In such an environment, the mind adapts. It learns that creating fiction is safer than exposing reality. Over years, this adaptation hardens into a habit, and the habit becomes a core feature of personality. Others suggest that pathological lying may be linked to deeper psychological traits, narcissism, antisocial tendencies, or unresolved trauma. But here's the haunting part. Not every pathological liar is malicious. Some genuinely cannot control the instinct to fabricate. Their brain treats lies as a form of survival, as natural as breathing. Think of it like this. While most people experience lying as a choice, weighing truth against convenience, for the pathological liar, the decision is often instantaneous, almost unconscious. Their stories spill out faster than their reflection, as though their mind is hardwired to create alternate realities on demand. And yet, what makes this so fascinating is not just the act of lying itself, but the psychology behind the performance. Because pathological liars are not careless. In fact, many are masterful storytellers. They weave narratives with precision, appealing to your emotions, your curiosity, even your sense of empathy. They know instinctively that humans don't just listen to facts. We feel stories. But here's the tragic irony. The same skill that makes them captivating also isolates them. A pathological liar builds relationships on foundations of sand. No matter how convincing, eventually the tide of reality comes in. And when it does, the trust they worked so hard to secure dissolves in an instant. If you've ever been close to someone like this, you'll know the confusion. One moment you feel bonded, the next you wonder if anything was real. It's a dizzying experience, like trying to stand still on a ship that won't stop swaying. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin questioning yourself. Did you misunderstand? Did you misremember? Or were you simply deceived from the very beginning? This psychological effect isn't accidental. Research shows that pathological liars often rely on something called gaslighting, even if they don't consciously intend to. By constantly shifting stories, denying past statements, and doubling down on contradictions, they cause others to doubt their own memory and perception. Over time, it's not just the liar who lives in an altered reality, it's everyone around them. But why? Why would someone choose to live this way, constructing fragile towers of fiction that are destined to collapse? The answer is as paradoxical as it is profound. At the core of pathological lying lies a desperate longing for control. Control over how others see them, control over their narrative, control over a world that, at some point in their life, must have felt unbearably unpredictable. For some, lying becomes a shield against shame. For others, it becomes the only way they know how to be noticed, admired, or even loved. And this is where the tragedy deepens, because when you peel back the layers of falsehood, what you often find is not arrogance, but insecurity. Not strength, but fragility. A pathological liar may seem confident on the surface, but inside, they are terrified that the unfiltered truth of who they are will never be enough. Here's an image to hold in your mind. Imagine a child holding a mask. At first, they put it on only when they feel scared, but with time, the mask grows comfortable. Eventually, they forget how to take it off. The mask fuses with their face, and when they look in the mirror, they can no longer tell where the mask ends and they begin. That's what pathological lying does to the soul. Of course, not every liar fits neatly into this picture. Some pathological liars chase power, some crave attention, others spin stories for no clear reason at all. But in every case, the cost is enormous, because what they gain in the short term, admiration, sympathy, a sense of importance, they lose in the long term, trust, intimacy, authenticity, and those are the very things that make life meaningful. If you've ever been lied to by someone you cared about, you know this pain. It's not just about the false words, it's about the fracture of reality itself, the realization that the moments you treasured, the conversations you replayed in your mind, the memories you thought were solid, may never have existed at all. That kind of betrayal leaves scars deeper than words can describe. And yet, here's the paradox again. Pathological liars are often victims of their own lies. Studies have shown that over time, frequent lying can actually alter brain pathways. The act of deceiving becomes easier, less stressful, even automatic. But the price is heavy. Relationships crumble, credibility evaporates, and deep inside, an identity crisis brews. Because if every story is fiction, who are you really? Philosophically, this brings us to an unsettling question. If a person lies so often that they themselves believe the lie, does the truth even exist for them anymore? Is their identity real, or is it just a collection of stories told so many times they became reality in their own mind? And if so, are they deceivers or the deceived? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Because it makes us confront something we'd rather ignore. That all of us, to some degree, live in narratives we've constructed. Maybe not pathological, but protective. We tell ourselves stories about why something ended, about why someone left, about why we didn't pursue a dream. They aren't always true, but they soften the edges of reality. And in that sense, the pathological liar is not some alien creature, but an extreme reflection of a very human tendency, the need to reshape truth so that it doesn't shatter us. So, the question becomes, how do you deal with someone like this? How do you navigate a world where truth is fluid and fiction is presented as fact? Psychologists recommend a mix of compassion and boundaries. Compassion, because pathological lying often hides deep wounds. Boundaries, because without them, you risk being pulled into the illusion yourself. It's not about fixing the liar. That rarely works. It's about preserving your own clarity, your own grounding in reality, while recognizing that their lies are not a reflection of your worth, but of their own inner struggles. And maybe, just maybe, that's the hardest lesson of all. To see through the mask without trying to rip it off, to recognize the fragility behind the deception, to accept that sometimes the truth is not something you can force into the light. Because in the end, pathological lying isn't just about deception, it's about identity. It's about the stories we cling to when reality feels unbearable. And it's about the quiet tragedy of living in a world where even the self cannot be trusted. But there's more here, something even deeper. Because if you've been paying attention, you might already be wondering, what happens when the pathological liar finally faces themselves? When the mask slips, even just for a moment, and they are forced to confront the raw, unfiltered truth of who they are. That's where the story takes its darkest, yet most illuminating turn, and that's exactly where we're headed next. When a pathological liar finally encounters themselves, the moment is rarely dramatic. There is no grand confession, no cinematic unraveling of decades of deceit. More often, it's subtle. A pause in the mirror, a hesitation before repeating a story, a small flicker of awareness that perhaps, just perhaps, the life they've been presenting doesn't quite line up with the life they're living. That moment can be terrifying, because behind every carefully constructed narrative lies a truth they've spent years, maybe even a lifetime, avoiding. To face it means confronting vulnerability, shame, and sometimes unbearable grief. It's easier, far easier, to continue weaving stories than to sit in the silence of authenticity. And yet, deep down, the human spirit longs for truth. We may run from it, disguise it, bury it beneath layers of invention, but something within us aches for alignment. To know that the words we speak match the reality we live. To feel that our connections are built on something solid, not on air. For a pathological liar, this longing is often hidden, even from themselves. But it exists, and in rare moments of honesty, when the mask cracks, it can surface in surprising ways. A sudden confession, a trembling apology, or even an abrupt retreat from the very people they deceived. It's easy to judge a pathological liar as selfish or manipulative, and yes, sometimes they are. But more often, their deception is less about harming others and more about protecting themselves. It doesn't excuse the pain they cause, but it explains the engine driving their behavior. And understanding that engine is the first step toward compassion. Because when you strip away the lies, what you often find is not a monster, but a person who never felt safe enough to be real. A person who believed that truth was too fragile, too dangerous to survive in the world. This is why confronting a pathological liar rarely works if it's done with anger alone. Anger only fuels the defense, pushing them deeper into the comfort of falsehood. What does work sometimes is calm clarity, reflecting reality back to them without shaming, offering truth without cruelty. It doesn't always break through. Often it doesn't. But in those rare cases when it does, something remarkable happens. The liar begins to see that the world does not end when the truth is spoken. Of course, not all liars change. Many never do. The habit is too ingrained, the identity too entangled. But for those who can, the process is like shedding skin. Painful, disorienting, but ultimately liberating. Because the truth once embraced becomes not a threat, but a source of freedom. For those who live alongside pathological liars, the lesson is equally profound. You cannot control another's honesty. You cannot force someone into authenticity, but you can guard your own. You can choose clarity over confusion, grounding over gaslight, reality over illusion. And in doing so, you protect the most valuable possession you have, your own trust in yourself. There's something deeply human in all of this, because while pathological lying exists at an extreme, it reminds us of a universal truth, that all of us wear masks. Some are small, some are subtle, some are nearly invisible. We tell ourselves and others stories not just to deceive, but to survive, to cope, to belong, to make sense of the chaos of life. And maybe the real question isn't whether we lie, but whether we recognize the masks we wear, whether we can take them off when it matters most, whether we can stand unguarded in front of the people we love and say, "This is who I really am." In the end, the psychology of a pathological liar isn't just about deception. It's about the fragile nature of identity. It's about the tension between the stories we tell and the truths we bury. And it's about the universal human struggle to be seen, to be accepted, to be enough. So the next time you encounter someone who bends reality in ways that leave you unsettled, remember this: behind the web of lies is a person shaped by fear, longing, and survival. You may never untangle their story. You may never know where the truth begins and ends, but you can hold onto your own truth. You can remain grounded, clear, and authentic in a world that sometimes feels like shifting sand. Because at the end of the day, honesty is more than just words. It's a way of being, and while lies may build walls, truth, fragile as it is, builds bridges. Bridges to connection, to meaning, to the kind of life that doesn't need invention to feel worth living. And that perhaps is the greatest irony of all. The pathological liar spends their life trying to create a reality they can never truly live in. But the rest of us, we still have the choice. The choice to live with masks on or to lay them down. The choice to weave fiction or to embrace the raw beauty of truth, the choice in the end to be real.